Let's do this. All right. Let's sit tall. We'll close the eyes and take a moment to breathe in and breathe out. Be grateful for all of it, for the easiness and for the difficulty, for the smooth path and for the challenges, for all of it, for the love and for the learning how to love, for the peace, for peace. And draw the hands together. We'll lift our voices in Om. Take a breath in. Om. And gently releasing the hands, flutter the eyes open. Do you have any requests? What would you like to talk about today? Oh.
I do.
Yes.
Okay, and this goes back to yoga.
Okay.
I get a massage once a month, which I had yesterday, and I've been having problems with my one hip. And she told me to talk to you.
Okay.
And you would tell me what to do.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Does she know me?
No, but she knows that I come every Sunday, and
yeah, and so there's a lot to that, right? So let's talk about hips in general,
okay.
And then I'll give everybody some suggestions that they might be able to do that support the hips, but that also can help alleviate pain. So the first thing is that everything in the body is symbolic of your life. So everything from your posture, to the muscle tension, to headaches, to tightness in the lower back, to hip pain, blurry vision. Everything about your body is symbolic of and related to your life. So, for example, I think a really easy example is to say the more stress we have in life, the more opportunities there are for headaches. Easily understood, right? Absolutely. And so nobody would even bother trying to deny that because we all know that's why they're called stress headaches, right? So the more stress we have, the more likely we are to have this certain kind of a headache. The more lifting that we do, the more likely we are to have shoulder pain, shoulder tightness, and maybe even end up with a shoulder injury. The more misalignment we have in the body, where maybe we're constantly hunched over, we have the head forward of the shoulders, we turn our feet way out or way in. The more misalignment that we have in the physical body, the more the body is going to harbor tension and tightness as a result. And it will begin to adopt those malalignments, thinking that they're normal because you're always there. That's the alignment that you're choosing. Or because the body's trying to keep itself safe. And so it'll make modifications, but not all modifications are healthy, right? With our hips, it's a really complicated matter because the tightness in the hips can be related to the low back. But tightness in the hips can also be related to emotions. Tightness in the hips can be related to anger, to shame, to an inability to accept oneself or the conditions of life. Tightness in the hips has so much to do with our emotional state and our worldview. And that tightness in the hips is a chronic muscle contraction. A muscle contraction that eventually also tightens not only the muscle, but the connective tissues. And as the connective tissues are chronically tightened, they become chronically shortened, so that we actually lose range of motion. We lose flexibility. We lose smoothness. And And as we get older, that chronic tightening and that chronic shortening lends itself to chronic, what we call chronic dryness in the tissues. And when the muscles are and the connective tissues of the hips are tight, that tightness has to pull on something. In order for one thing to shrink, something else must grow. So the hips are chronically tightening. What's it pulling on? It's pulling down on the low back, the spinal column, the neck, and the head, and it's pulling up on the back of the legs. Wow. So we're looking there at headaches, neck aches, shoulder aches, spinal misalignment, tightness in all the muscles of the back, idiopathic low back pain. We're talking about misalignment in the knees, pain in the ankles, pain in the soles of the feet. So many different things that can happen. But the other thing that happens too is that when those hip muscles are chronically tight, in addition to the connective tissue issues that brings about, it also affects your blood flow. Because, so put your finger in your hand like this. So I have my palm open and my pointer finger on my palm. And now close your fingers of your left hand over your pointer finger. Okay, now pretend that pointer finger is a straw. And that with your fingers loosely around it, you could get something through that straw, right? Like, let's just say it's a vein. Yeah, you could get blood through it easily. Now, contract those muscles and tighten it around that finger as much as you can. Do you think that impacts your blood flow? Yes, it does. Absolutely. So now you can release that and thank your finger and be like, I wasn't being mean to you. I was just having an experiment. So when we impact the blood flow, then what ends up happening is the blood is what carries the oxygen and the nutrients to the tissues of the body, right? So it's not able to do its job as effectively, and the tissues of the body can suffer. And it's not like this necessarily, it's not a huge change, but it's enough of a change that over time, if left unaddressed, it can cause some pretty significant issues. It can really cause some breakdown in the body, weakness. It can affect the body's ability to heal. It can affect bone structure. It can affect everything. And then there's a third component to this, and that's the mind state that comes about when there's such tension in the physical body. So when there's tension in the physical body, whether it's, from chronic misalignment or from a health condition or from an injury or from pregnancy, there's always going to be some kind of a tension associated with these things. And even the smallest little tension that comes into the body affects our mental state. It affects our ability to think peacefully, to think with contentment, to think with compassion and empathy. It affects us because we become concerned, impatient even sometimes, angry even sometimes, because of the tension in the body and the relative discomfort and sometimes pain that is bringing along with it. Does that make sense? So our mental state becomes what we could say is imbalanced, right? We may want to be happy, but hey, I've got pain in my body, so I can't be happy, right? Or I won't be happy. Not can't, won't. Exactly. All right. So we have all these relationships, and really they're extremely intricate and complicated, and this is a very simplified conversation about it. But they really are also very simple. I broke my knee. If I don't take the actions necessary to heal physically, mentally, and emotionally to whatever degree I can from that injury, the surgery, and all of the pain that that came along with it, then I'm going to be walking around in life guarded, sad, angry, depressed, concerned, disappointed, dissatisfied. And life's quality is going to be taken down a few rungs, right? So what is it that I have to do to take care of the knee? Well, I have to sit appropriate to my body now. So, and that's a humbling experience because, like, I used to be able to put the foot behind the head, no problem, right? I can't cross my leg, right? So there's a modicum, it's a huge one, of humility that has to be present with any injury, with any change in the physical body. There's a humility that has to come along with that so that we can change our lifestyle as we need to in order to meet the physical body where it's at. So no, I'm not going to try to put my foot behind my head. I'm not even going to try to cross my leg yet because it's not time. Instead, what am I going to do? I'm going to wrap my knee daily with hot towels. I'm going to oil massage my entire leg and all the way up to the hip because this affects the hip. I'm going to stay in contact with my doctor as I need to. I'm going to do whatever I have to do. I'm going to eat anti-inflammatory foods because inflammation is a big issue with regard to this type of an injury. I'm going to do whatever I need to do in a humble, accepting way in order to take better care of my physical body. Because taking care of my physical body on some level is also taking care of my mental, emotional body. And when those things are taken care of, even if the knee is never perfect again, when I am taking care of myself, I am also taking care of my spiritual self. I'm empowering myself to move beyond the discomforts of the body, beyond the discomforts of the mind, and into the realm of acceptance, and into the realm of even going beyond acceptance. Even going beyond acceptance to the place where, there's discomfort there. So what? I can't put my foot behind my head anymore. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean anything much anyway. What matters, what means something, is the quality that I bring to my life and to myself and to those people who are around me. So let me focus on that instead. Make sense? Yeah. So coming back to the hips, hip issues are like a really common concern in our society. There's a lot of reasons for that too. One is that we tend to push ourselves to the extreme physically. And we tend to do things that we know we're not supposed to do, and we know we're not supposed to do them because they hurt really bad and they cause us to stay up at night whimpering in pain or, make it difficult to walk, these types of things. But we do them anyway because we don't want to look like we can't. So humility is necessary there to back off of the things that we should not be doing and start doing the things that are helpful and supportive to us. Yoga practice is definitely one of the things that's helpful and supportive. The appropriate yoga practice, right? So when there's hip pain, and again, we haven't talked about what kind of hip pain this is or if there's any doctors involved or anything, so this is a very generic conversation about this. But, restorative practices are generally very helpful for the body because they increase blood circulation. Increased blood circulation means what? That the tension is letting up a little bit. So you're trying to drink your drink with that paper straw. That paper straw that's now saturated and folds in on itself, right? And you know how you sit there and you play with it trying to get it open just so you can get a little bit of soda through it because you won't drink from the glass? Yeah? Okay. Well, when you're in a restorative yoga posture, the idea is that the tension is relieved a little bit, the straw opens even a little bit more, relaxes a little bit more. That's a funny word, relax. Take that with a grain of salt. There's a more medical way to say it. I'll save you from that. And the blood gets through a little bit more. The breath gets deeper. The breath brings more oxygen and nutrients into the body, gives it to the blood, which travels around the body, delivering it to the places that need it. And while it's delivering the nutrients and the oxygen, it's collecting the toxins from all the little capillaries throughout the body and drawing those back toward the lungs where they are exchanged for the next exhalation so that they can leave the body. So the relaxation postures, the restorative postures, and even many of the yin postures, there's some that would have a caution to them, but they will bring about a greater sense of relaxation in the body, which will bring about a greater sense of relaxation in the muscles, which will bring about a greater circulation. Those things will bring about a greater mental state of calmness, patience, deepening the breath, feeling contentment. That will allow the body to continue to relax, to continue to release unnecessary tension, which will allow circulation to become even more empowered, which will bring about even greater contentment. It's a wicked cycle. It's a beautifully wicked cycle. It's the cycle you want. It's. I think it was, his last name is Johnson. He wrote the Posture of Meditation, Will Johnson. He wrote The Posture of Meditation, this very tiny little book on meditation. And in there, I think he called that, he said it's the cycle of resiliency, maybe, is what he referred to it as. But it is a real thing. It is a real thing. And the moment that you reintroduce unnecessary tension into the body, which you will because you're human and you're living a life, then it'll change again. Then you got to go back to yoga class for another reset. And you keep going back to yoga class. So that's number one. You keep going back to yoga class, but to the right yoga class. Now, for the hips in general, how many of you have hip pain or hip issues, tightness? Yeah. How many of you have low back issues? Yeah. Right. So then for those things, postures like, happy baby pose can be supportive. And again, these are generalities, right? But why happy baby pose can be supportive? Because the position of the knee coming in toward the shoulder is a deep bend into that hip, which initially is going to be which is going to contract. It's going to compress, but then when you release that, there's going to be a flow of blood nutrients into that area, and it's going to refresh and revitalize. And we're talking a little bit. We're not talking about a miracle here. It's not 100% after one practice. It's a little bit at a time that you'll start seeing the difference. But those postures where you're drawing the knee in close to the chest because that's a tight compression of the hip, and then you release that out. And the moment that you release that out, the circulation picks back up there again. Additionally, you want to be mindful about the extremes that you're going to. It's a little bit different than a wisdom talk, but it's okay. It's got a little bit in there too. You want to be mindful about the extremes that you go. You don't want to go to your edge, because when you go to your edge, many of you have heard me say this before, the tendency is that as soon as you think, oh, I'm going to my edge, I'm at my edge, you've already passed it. You've already gone beyond it. And in situations where you have pain in your body, going beyond your edge means that you're inviting more pain. So instead, go to the place before your edge, just before your edge, where you can still breathe. And what do I mean by breathe? I mean, like, you're not like, I got too far. Okay, well, I'll stay here anyway. You're not in that tense voice trying to grasp onto the breath. That instead, you're at a place right before the edge where you can be resilient in your breathing. The breath is easy, it's flowing, it's not encumbered, and then you know that circulation is still being empowered on some levels. And that's where you work from. Then you wait for the invitation. And when the hip opens, right, when the tension releases a little bit, that's an invitation. Then maybe you go a little tiny bit further. But you always keep your edge a couple of steps ahead of you so that you don't go beyond it. When you're working with injury, in yoga, that's super important. In physical therapy, they'll push you beyond your edge. That's their job. That's, you go to the PT and it hurts. You go to yoga, it's not supposed to hurt. So you always let your edge be a couple of steps ahead of you. That's really important. And other than that, then kind of the compression postures, where you're drawing the knee close to the chest or close to the armpit, and then the opening, which is enhancing circulation in that moment. Other than that, without knowing the specifics of it, I wouldn't want to say, do this posture, don't do this posture, because it's just so general. Right. But we can talk privately, though, after session, and I'll give you a couple more ideas on that. But is that helpful at all? Yeah. So the other thing, too, is mountain pose. Mountain pose is such an important posture. Would you stand up for a moment? So mountain pose, most people, put your papers down. Most people look at mountain pose like, this is so silly, I'm just standing up tall. But mountain pose is so important. You look at mountain pose and you say, look at your feet. Bring them parallel. Yeah, so parallel means the root of the second toe is in line with the center of the ankle. Important, number one, not everybody can stand like that. An individual who has bowed legs is going to have a really difficult time. An individual who has tight muscles is going to have a really difficult time too. The bowed legs is not curable. The tight muscles can be worked with, right? So that's the first question. Is the tendency to point the feet outward because of a malalignment skeletally in the legs, or because of muscles? And it's muscles. So therefore, sit with that discomfort. It's fine. Yeah. So keeping the don't sit. Keeping the feet parallel now. The hands are palms face the body, but not touching it. Fingertips toward the floor. Lift the kneecaps a little bit. Yep. Take the tailbone down slightly. Soften the heart space. Relax the shoulders. Take the head back slightly. There you go. Close the eyes. Mountain pose. The alignment of the body in a standing posture. Everything comes from here. So if we start walking from here, it's going to be a much different experience than if we go to walk from a place of one foot's turned out, one foot's straight forward, both feet are turned out. It's going to be different, right? So take this posture a lot. Stand against a wall, back against the wall, hands by the sides. That'll tell you what straight is. Would you go back here? People are usually pretty shocked at this. Now, the back of the heels are close to the wall. The buttocks is touching the wall. Back of the shoulders touching the wall. That's straight. Isn't that excruciatingly weird? Yes. Okay, come sit down. Yeah. So just some things. So you could stand against a wall like that, for like 3 to 5 minutes and be like, okay, so how do I find relaxation here? How do I find contentment here? Because there's resistance when you first do that. There's resistance when you're back there like, this is weird, this is not the way I am. Yeah, that's because most oftentimes you're here. And that posture is asking you to open up the heart space, to open the mind, to be tall, So practice that, and with the feet parallel, and see if there's any change in the muscular tension over time. Yeah, and then we'll talk in addition to that. Okay. So that's not typically what we talk about. We don't usually talk about the yoga practice, although we do, I don't know, just of a different context, right? But I guess one of the takeaways from that part of the conversation is to say that whatever happens in the body and whatever is happening in the mind and whatever's happening in the heart, these are all reflections of what's happening in life, the way that you're approaching life. So are you fast-paced? Get it done, get it done, get it done, get it done? Are you always rushing into the next moment, into the next day? Are you already thinking about next time you go to Colombia? It's like we tend to always be beyond our edge rather than in the now, right here, present. We always tend to be over there somewhere in Tomorrowland or next year land. So if we bring ourselves into this moment more and more often and stop worrying so much about the future, then and we take care of ourselves in the moment now, we take care of the things that need to be taken care of now, then a greater amount of what we needlessly worry about the future will have taken care of itself. And the saying I love, and you've all heard me say this before too, for the most part, 100% of everything will yes, will correct itself without you. Will resolve itself, I should say, without you. 100% of everything, right, will resolve itself without you. So most of what you worry about, you have no need to worry. You're just telling yourself stories. Well, what if? What if I don't have enough for retirement? What if I don't have enough for vacation next year? What if? What if? The what ifs, they say 90-ish% to 95% of your what ifs will never happen. And the small percentage that does happen are not the horrible ones. They're the simple ones that you didn't need to worry about anyway. All you needed to do was be mindful in the moment, Yeah. You ever throw a party and you had a thought, what if nobody comes? Did people come? Yeah, right? So try not to worry so much. And if you don't worry so much, then you won't have that muscular tension. You won't have the emotional and mental tension. And your heart will be more open and receptive to life as it approaches you. Right? What else would you like to talk about today? Yes.
Kundalini.
What would you like?
Kundalini.
Kundalini. Whoa, that's a big topic. What specifically? Any particular part of it?
Awakening it when you're not ready.
Yeah.
Trying to
Yeah.
overload.
Okay, so first, what is Kundalini? So there's a couple of ways the word Kundalini is used. First, Kundalini is what we can refer to as the spiritual energy within the body. It is the Shakti, or the divine feminine energy within the body that lays dormant at the base of the spine. And it's dormant in 99.9% of people because we're caught up in our day-to-day life and our worries, right? And when we're caught up in our worries, then we can't be caught up in our spiritual practices. It's like kind of one or the other. So it lays dormant. It's sleeping inside of you. Now, we could really go deep into that. That spiritual energy is associated with the feminine aspect of divinity, which is called Shakti. And really, it's pure energy. That's what Kundalini is. It's just pure energy. It's the energy of consciousness. It's the energy of the universe. We could get poetical about it and say it's the energy of love. It's the energy of acceptance. It's the energy of surrender. It's the energy of unity. It's the energy of the truth, of oneness. It's the energy of the truth. Om Tat Sat. Now, any one of those poetical things that we look at is the energy of love. Well, that lies dormant within us because even though we love a little, and sometimes we love a lot, we rarely, if ever, love completely. Love is very conditional in our human experience. But when the Kundalini is awakened, there are no conditions. Because love is just a given. It's what it is. It's complete. When we, in our human experience, peace, some of us think in a moment, I feel so peaceful in this moment. But really there's a trepidation in the back of the mind that is waiting for the next disturbing moment to steal your peace. So while, yes, we do experience peace in little bits and pieces, no pun intended, or maybe it was completely intended, we experience peace in little bits and pieces, but when the Kundalini rises, we experience peace only. Happiness. In our human experience, a little bit of happiness here, a little bit of happiness there, but happiness is very much based on satisfaction. Satisfaction is short-lived because I was very happy that I had a chocolate sundae with hot fudge, but that happiness evaded me once the ice cream started to melt and made a mess on my white shirt. Right? So happiness is very fleeting in our human experience, but when that kundalini awakens, happiness is bliss. And that's all there is. No matter what life situations or how many stains there are on my white shirt from chocolate ice cream. So kundalini is absolute. Absolute. Now think about that for a moment. This is a great conversation. Think about that for a moment. In order for you to love completely, what do you have to do? What do you have to leave behind you? Your ego. Amber. Expectations.
Past.
The past. Say it again. Selfishness. That's a good one, yes.
Am I supposed to come up with a new one? I like what she said, expectations.
That works, absolutely. Hey, there's many levels to that. Yeah. Attachments to material things, right? Now, if I said, okay, everything you just said, we're going to do that right now. What would happen to your nervous system? Right, it would go into fight, flight, freeze. And most of you would run out the door. One or two of you would freeze, right? And somebody would inevitably get up and say, no. And they'd make fists and be like, I'm not letting it go. So what does that mean? It means your nervous system isn't prepared for it. Your nervous system is not prepared for kundalini. And so in her great compassion, she sleeps. She sleeps. And the idea, or the theory, or the teaching, is that through the practices of kundalini yoga, or any of the yoga traditions, through the meditation, through the lifestyle and the self-care, what you are effectively doing is toning your nervous system so that when you do let some of those things go, you're not running out the door, freezing, or fighting. That you are accepting. And in that acceptance, she wakes up a little bit. Lifetimes. But there are teachings that are fast-paced. Inappropriately so, in my opinion. Where a teacher has students in front of them and they're teaching them the practices and they're teaching them the shortcuts, but they're not addressing the lifestyle, the diet, the emotionality, the mentality. And without those in place, the practice is not enough. It's like an individual who's a murderer. And they say, I want to love everybody from now on. I want to love everybody from now on. This is actually a story. Beautiful, spiritual story. There's a man, and he's convicted of murder, and he's murdered a lot of people. And he goes to this guru, or he calls the guru to the prison, because he's in prison, He says to the guru, I want to awaken. I want to be awakened. So give me whatever I need in order to awaken. And by that, he means that the kundalini is awakened, that he comes into an awakened state of being, a place where he is pure love. And the guru goes back and he's talking to somebody, and the person says, well, what are you going to give him? And he says, well, I can't give him what he asked for because he's not ready for it. All his mind knows is death. All his heart knows is death. All he's done in his life is death. So what I will give him is the mantra Mara. Mara. Mara means death. But he didn't tell him that. He just said, just chant this. Mara, 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 Mara. And as you become more profoundly capable of chanting it with the breath, chant it faster, faster, faster. Mara, 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 Rama, 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 Rama. Chant it so quickly that it becomes one sound. In that moment, Mara, death, becomes Rama. Rama is divinity. But the Guru didn't explain that to him, which was okay, because what he gave him was something appropriate to the place that he was at in his life. And with practice and with time, it changed his heart. And therefore, this lifetime, a couple lifetimes from now, he eventually got what he asked for. But it was because there was a complete change. But when a teacher comes to a student and says, here is a Kali mantra, chant this. Oh. And has no suggestion of all of the pre-practices that should go along with that, like the inquiry about what is Kali? What does Kali represent? What is this practice? What is the condition of my sincerity? What is the condition of my sincerity? If my sincerity is not sincere, what am I asking for from the goddess of destruction? Yeah. So we need to be mindful. Now, let's just say that we had this experience and, it's the experience is now in the past. Because the kundalini awakening will not be sustained in an individual. It is a temporary experience because the human body is still susceptible to the conditions of the world and nature. So it's only a momentary experience. But what happens is it can fry the nervous system a bit, right? It can leave a person in a chronic state of fight or flight because it's so jolting. It's like in the Bhagavad Gita, right? Where Arjuna says to Krishna, show me the truth of yourself. Really, I'm ready. And so Krishna shows him the light. And Arjuna goes, whoa, bring it back down to something I can understand because I can't understand that. You got to bring it back down to something that you understand, to something you can identify with, to something that you are inspired by. You need to take care of the nervous system. So how do we take care of the nervous system once we've had, a kundalini experience that was not a great experience? Abhyanga, oil rub, is very important for the entire body. Breathing practices are very important for the entire body. Acceptance is important for the mind. I accept that this happened. I accept it 100%. I accept that it jolted me, and it is inspiring me now to be present in my life now, in whatever condition I find myself in. That acceptance is number one. But you cannot have acceptance without having some atonement to the nervous system. So it's back and forth until you truly have faith that you're okay, and that you learn something. Because even though we can sit and say, a teacher should never teach that, and students have to be prepared and all these things, the bigger reality, kind of the more esoteric teaching, is that everything happens when it's meant to. So whatever the kundalini experiences you had, whatever the fender bender experience, whatever the broken knee experience, it happened when it was supposed to happen for your own benefit. For you to come to a place of acceptance about something in your life. Not about everything, that'd be too much, but about something. Something. What my knee taught me was that I could sit in a wheelchair for 4 months. What it taught me was that I don't need to put my foot behind my head. It's not necessary. Actually, I knew that before, but it was cool. It taught me that on a whole new level because, no, I don't need to sit cross-legged in order to meditate. you know? There's always ego there. No matter how far along you think you are, the ego is always there, right? Always there. So everything that happens to us for the purpose of our own learning and for the purpose of our own benefit. But to know that logically and to accept that wholeheartedly are two really different things. Two really different things. So a daily mantra could be, I am accepting more and more deeply every day everything that I am, the potential I hold, and everything I will become. You know? Acceptance. So the kundalini is this universal energy. It is energy itself. It is an aspect of the divine feminine when divine feminine has no form. Therefore, it's not female. The kundalini is the experience of bliss. It is the experience of peace. It is the experience of unity and oneness when it is awakened within us. But in her compassion, she goes to sleep for a little while. She's like, I'm going to take a nap while you doing what you're doing, you human person, you. I'm just going to sleep here. When you're ready, wake me up. You know? When you're not ready, be mindful. Because when you wake me up, you wake me up. I will go back to sleep again, but there's a consequence to waking me up. And that consequence you may or may not be ready for. So prepare yourself. When Kundalini awakens within us, again, we have a temporary experience for most people. There may be a handful of people that are alive today. Literally, it would only be a handful of people who the Kundalini awakened and stayed that way. I would call them saints, maybe Mother Amma. So her Kundalini was never sleeping to begin with because she's a reincarnation of the Mother, Kali. So for them, but for us, we need to become more comfortable, if possible, with the idea of this too shall pass. This peace I feel is going to pass. This anger I feel is going to pass. These things are going to fluctuate back and forth like a ping pong game. And so the more flexible we can be to that change, to that fluctuation, the more flexible we can be to that, the more we are supporting our nervous system all the way around. But the more we say, I don't want to be angry, I don't want to be angry, and we're getting angry at being angry, it's kind of silly, right? It's like, I don't want to be angry, I don't want to be... We walk around pouting because we're mad instead of being aware of what we're mad about. And if we face that we are angry in a moment, what am I angry about? And then we do the work of resolution of our anger, either by addressing the problem at hand, because sometimes anger is an indicator, or by acknowledging that this anger is egotistical only, and we do the work of that. That's supporting our nervous system. When we say, I want to be in love, I want to be in love, I want to be in love, because I'm full of love and I want to be in love, right? Well, there might be a part of you that is truly just wanting to love, but it may also be that the ego is chasing love, chasing after it as a qualifier. Like, if you love me, then that means I'm worth something, right? So a lot of people do that. They chase after love because they either want to fix people or they want someone to prove their worthiness to them, So the more that we can face that and we can accept within ourselves that, I have a tendency to chase the idea that somebody else needs to tell me I'm worthy. I have a tendency to chase love. I have a tendency to chase it down and then address that. Why? Well, maybe that was lacking when I was a child. Maybe, my parents didn't tell me I was worthy or teach me about worthiness, or maybe it's socially, something that has been put onto to our shoulders as women, particularly, right? Men too, I think a lot nowadays also, though, as the tides in the world are changing, right? We're seeing a lot of the issues that women have faced for many, many years, forever, are now also being faced by men as their traditional roles are being replaced and they're not sure what the new role is. So looking at why am I compelled to this behavior, and then doing whatever it is that we can do to address it, that's going to help the nervous system. It's a big job being on a spiritual path. You are always on the spiritual path. You're never not on your spiritual path. You just accept it or you resist it. And when you resist it, you're like, I'm not on a spiritual path. It's like, yes, that's part of your spiritual path. So we are always on the path. The question is, are we always in sync with what we could be doing in order to have a more profound experience, a knowing experience? Or are we closing our eyes and our hearts to what is and saying, I was hurt in the past, so I'm never going to get hurt again? It's a fallacy. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get hurt physically, you're going to get hurt emotionally, and you're going to be hurt mentally. It's just part of being human. So as best you can, let go of the hurts of the past, because they're over now. Learn what you were meant to learn from them. Carry whatever lesson it is forward, but don't close yourself off as a result of that lesson. Nope. If you do that, then your steps will be very short and protected instead of long strides and an open-hearted willingness to be present to whatever this life brings us. Does that make sense? Yeah? It's a great question, though. Did I answer at least some of it?
Yeah, can I ask another question?
Of course, yeah.
So I'm just trying to put like a name and an understanding to an experience that I've had. I'm not sure if this is, the case, what happened, but if the kundalini attempts to awaken because of, some kind of practice that was kind of forced in a person who has complex trauma, does that have a tendency to like dredge up repressed emotions and memories and things like that?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So the kundalini doesn't attempt to awaken, it either does or it doesn't. And the instigator of that awakening is the behavior of the practitioner. So the practitioner's behavior awakens the kundalini or it doesn't. Now, when you have an individual who has complex trauma and they have an awakening and their nervous system is still reacting to the trauma, then what kind of energy do they have to hold this energy of kundalini, to embrace this energy of kundalini, right? It's like, so Jeanette was staying here for a week for a personal retreat not too long ago, and some of you know Jeanette from New Jersey, right? She's one of my students from over there, but she's also a teacher now in her own regard. Wonderful teacher. She brought something with her called a power plate. And she said, Swamini, I'm going to leave this here for you. You should try this every day. Stand on it for 60 seconds. And I'm like, okay. It's like this big, bulky thing. It's about this high, about this long, about this wide. And you stand on it, and it vibrates. It really vibrates. No, it's like an earthquake vibration. Like, right? So I get up there, and I stand on it, and she turns it on. She forgot to tell me there's straps to hold on to, and I wasn't expecting much anyway, because, I practice yoga. Right? So I stand on there, she turns it on, and I went, whoa! I had no way of holding on. It was the craziest experience. I felt like I was going to fall straight back. I had to pick up the straps and have something to hold on to in order to hold on. So similarly, in kind of a weird way, when kundalini awakens inside, and we don't have the energy or the wherewithal to be a container for that awakening, then shit gets triggered. Oh my God, right? Big time triggered. But it's not always a bad thing. Because what comes to the surface so that it can be faced, so that it can be worked with, so it can be dealt with. So maybe, because, like Ma is not cruel in any way, shape, or form. She's compassionate and loving. So if she awakens within you, she sees an opportunity. She's saying, here, you're ready for this. Handle this now. Work with this now. Face this now. And we in our humanness say, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm still in the traumatized state. And yes, you may still be in a traumatized state. But you do have the potential to resolve something, some level of this. So it's complicated, It is. It comes down to ignorance of self. Ignorance, avidya. In yoga is a huge word. We talk about it all the time. The more ignorant we are of the potential that we carry, the more ignorant we are of the present moment, the more ignorant we are of the spiritual self, the Atman, the soul within, the more we suffer. So if we go through life, and look, trauma is a tricky topic, complicated trauma. We've all talked about this many, many times, many hours. Complicated trauma is a very tricky thing. But at some point we have to, if we wish to stop suffering because of the trauma, at some point after the counseling, after the therapy, after the internal work that needs to be done, after the tears, after the grief, and maybe even woven in between each one of those, we must come to the realization, I am not my trauma. Yeah? Was that?
I guess when the heat turns
Oh.
on, it just like opens the door a little bit, and it sounds like someone's not very.
Or that was just the mother saying, right on. So at some point, we must come to a heartfelt acceptance. I am not my trauma. I am not my trauma. Trauma has happened to my body. Trauma has happened to my mind. And trauma has been embedded in my emotions. But I am not those things. We don't want to bypass. We don't want to deny the pain of trauma. But we also don't want to live there. So we must do the work necessary in order to be able to be a container for the consequences of trauma, which are long-term, not just this life. If you adhere to a reincarnation, those consequences are going to be there later too, But we don't want those to be the only thing that we focus on. Yeah. So maybe Ma comes to us and she says, here's a little bit of something for you, a little bit more to work on. We could, instead of saying to ourselves, I'm really afraid that this awakening has triggered in me all of this negativity, we could turn in the other direction and we could say, Ma, thank you for visiting me. Wow, you came to me to show me that you're with me. In all of this, you're right here with me. I don't know that I'm ready to let go of all this stuff yet, because she's not asking you to. But knowing that you're with me gives me some more strength. Try looking at it that way. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah, it's all in perception, right? It's all the way we look at things. All the way we see. Any other questions about that?
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Let me do a time check. All right, it's 11:26. So I think that's what we have from, what a diverse conversation. Everything from hips to kundalini. Yay. But they have a lot in common. They do. Right? In kundalini, you're constantly doing stuff with your hips. So, yeah, don't do kundalini if you have a hip injury. Stick to more restorative practices. Yeah. All right, let's sit tall. We'll close the eyes. Take a breath in and breath out. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. May we make the conscious choice that instead of being reminded about how much we lack, that at least every once in a while we remember how much we actually have, how whole we actually are, and we take sanctuary in the truth of ourself. The truth of unity, the truth of peace, and the truth of love. Let's lift our voices in Om. Take a breath in. Om. Bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledging all that is. And draw the face to center. Thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for supporting this conversation or this approach to the conversation. Every once in a while, I just like to ask you, what do you want to know? And see where that takes us to. And it's because that's important too, right? You can come and just listen, but life is real, and you have day-to-day things that come up and that fall away, and I'm sure that you want answers to those as well, or at least a discussion about them. So thank you all for being here. And have brunch. Give them lots of love in the kitchen. They work so hard for you. They really do. Yeah. And I'll see you next time.